So, Lori Boyette.
Here.
Mary Frost.
Here.
Carla.
Here.
Ruben. What's Ruben? Lisa Price.
Here.
Alex.
Here.
Janine. Janine Rawling. Jane, do you know? Did she move? She told me she was. Okay, well, we'll have to replace her. Christy. Here. Craig Ryan. David Reeves.
Here.
Kathy Rogers.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Dr. Ronald Stewart.
Here.
And Lori Vincent. Okay, so we did that. So the next PowerPoint. So there's all the people. So the trauma system rules. Jane, do you want to give everybody an update? Jane and I went through the trauma system rules. There's still a lot of work to do. The goal is to try to create a common language and format for them. So the language is not changing from what the committee recommended, but the format is changing slightly. So Jane, any comments?
Well, they haven't been touched since you and I worked together in February. Pretty much when Mr. Bishop, is he here? No. When Mr. Bishop left me and went over to TDM, thanks to Chief Kidd, I was left alone for legislative session, so that's pretty much has consumed my days since then. Next week is the last week. I'm excited, so we'll get back to work on them.
Good. The next item on the agenda, there's two surveys that we want to present to you, and one of them is fairly lengthy. It takes the model trauma system plan and walks you through that. And the next one is the trauma registry. So if you'll go back one slide. Tammy did a survey regarding the Texas Trauma Registry and the status of it. So Tammy?
Yes, there were, what we asked on the survey, besides some demographics like, what level of designation is your hospital from, was also a list of questions that were our expanded traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury questions that RSWG had recommended, the Registry Solution Work Group. And we wanted to get the larger group of stakeholders to say whether or not they felt like that list should be required or optional. Another thing that was on the survey was asking them about the abbreviated injury scaling and whether they've had training and what version of that they use, et cetera. So we had 159 people who responded. Also was 159 entities. I haven't gone and looked at the actual data to check and make sure that we've got a one-to-one correspondence on that, but I think we do. And we had 14% were non-designated hospitals, 14% were level 1, 6% were level 2, 24% were level 3, and 36% were level 4 hospitals. Then we asked them whether they did web data entry or whether they uploaded a data file to the state. So 33% of the respondents did web data entry and 57% uploaded data. When we asked if they had had abbreviated injury scaling training, 95, which is 60%, said yes. When we asked them if they had an abbreviated injury scaling tool, 74 said yes, which is 47% of the total, but of course it's higher when you look amongst the people who had training. 74 out of the 95 had a tool. So there is more information in here, which I will be presenting on May 30th at 1:30 when we do our May stakeholder update meeting. And then, of course, those presentations from the update meetings also go on our website. Any questions?
You want to have any questions for Tammy? If you'll just stay there just a second. Next slide, please. So the Trauma Systems Committee's Registry Work Group has had 2 conference calls, and then we met prior to this meeting. So the agenda items that we talked about are listed there for you. So we've broken it down into implementation, operations, report, rehab, and then we didn't get to the disaster side of it and open discussion, so you'll see some dots there. So we talked about communication, education, and resources. So the first thing I want to do is if you were present for this meeting, I want you to stand up or raise your hand. So I want you to know we're not doing this in isolation. So all of the committees have an appointed representative to this work group. So this work group, there's two items that the stakeholder that's representing your committee is supposed to do. So this is work that we need done before the August meeting. And that is, for example, pediatrics. Pediatrics needs to define the top 5 reports that they want generated out of the Texas Trauma Registry. And that report, when you say, I want this report, you need to define what data elements you want from that report. In addition to those data elements, if you could tell us what questions you're trying to answer by that report. Okay? So that was the first thing. We need that by August. The second item that we need from you is patient categorizations. For example, if you ask me how I look at trauma patients in the hospital, we talk about blunt versus penetrating, those that come from the scene, those that are transferred to us. We talk about patients that are flown from the scene, pediatric, geriatric. So that's what I mean by types of patient categories. So we need that from those committees as well. So if you're in the room and you're representing your stakeholder group, and so every committee has a stakeholder representative on this work group. We need that by August. So from communications, and I'm going to ask everybody that was there to chime in, and Tammy as well. One of the big issues that we've identified with the registry is the perception of a lack of communication from us and from Tammy to the stakeholders. So there is a website that is now in place for the registry work group. If you'll go to DISH's website, if you'll look for the trauma registry, you will find it. All of the discussions, all of the minutes regarding the registry are now posted there. Not only that, you will find all of the educational links and resources for the registry posted on that website. So we're trying to train people, if you have got a question about the registry, go to that one spot, and if you don't see it, then contact one of your stakeholder representatives, and we will try to answer that and make sure it gets posted there so every other stakeholder can look at that. All the educational resources, timelines, and schedule are also on there. So Tammy, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so there's DSHS has a web page for every program. So Jane has a web page that has information about this work group on it. And then our injury program has a web page which also has a link to the registry work group, but it also has all the other documents that we have created, which are presentations we've done at webinars and training documents. So that'll be on the injury webpage, which you can find everything from our main page. All the links are there.
Mary, anything you want to comment on?
No, I know there's been some communication stuff, and they're really getting bombarded with information. So I think one of the things I personally realized is that they've got to order this stuff up. So one of the things that we did ask and to try and communicate is, since everybody does have a request, something's got to come first, something's got to come second, something's got to come third. So being able to put this stuff together in kind of a matrix and be able to communicate that back out to you about what's going to get done, in what order it could be done in, and why it needs to be done in that order. So the other thing I would also request is they spend a lot of time generating surveys, and I know we all get surveys all the time, but you have to base your information on something. And to be fair, you can only go on the information from the people that you got it back from. So I would encourage you, if you get that survey, take the time to answer it. I got one for rehab, I answered it, and I sent it to my rehab people, they answered it. Please take the time, because it's not fair to them to say, well, that's not what we want. Well, 60% of you indicated that's what you wanted, they've got to go on something. So please, if there's a survey that comes, we're trying to glean some information from you, contact us, let the people on that committee know. Because, it's, again, communication is a two-way thing. So I think that we need to be fair to the state and make sure that we're all getting that information.
Kelly, anything you want to add?
Not necessarily. From the RAC perspective, we primarily need to look at aggregate information and collection, and that's from the stakeholders in my group. That's what we would be looking at more, above and beyond the individual institutional level.
From the resource standpoint, there were some significant issues identified. We do not have a solution. The state has 7 people to run their registry. 3 of them are epidemiologists. When you ask who is the registry expert, they don't really have that person that we can all relate to. Is Irene in the room?
No, she had to go back.
So there's not an Irene for the state registry. So we did spend some time talking about that. So we looked at different solutions or recommended. I know I saw Brenda come in the room. So the question is, should we invest in more resources for the state level? Should we, would it be best for all of the hospitals and EMS agencies to have their own vendor and software program and not invest in how to build this other registry to be able to do the AIS scoring and ISS scoring? So there were a lot of discussions like that occurred today regarding resources, and we did not come up with a solution, but there were several things that were recommended. So Brenda, I know you're in the room somewhere. Any thoughts?
Well, part of it is like listening to Tammy's statistics Listening to Tammy's statistics, I'm wondering how many resources are we utilizing to fix the smaller percentage of users? A lot of I don't remember what your numbers were exactly, but it was like 60 or 70% are just data they're just uploading files.
Yeah, so that was just based on the people who answered this survey. But in general, we do have, it's really hard because you can count users and then you can count records when you're trying to figure out how to prioritize these things. So the majority of records come in on file upload, but then when you look at the numbers of people who do web data entry, they are about 40%. They don't represent 40% of the records, but they represent 40% of the people who are submitting data. Yes.
I think it's significant to think about it in those terms. Do we need to come up with another solution for that 40% rather than spending a lot of resources trying to fix that side? Just that thought. But the other side of it is I have to wonder if we're spending a lot of time working on primary levels of uploading data and when we should be considering what the state's doing at a tertiary level. So, just my thought.
What Brenda's talking about is how many of you are familiar with the National Trauma Data Bank? The question is, should we make the state more like the National Trauma Data Bank, the repository that you get information, and create, let's say, super racks or larger racks or racks that have regional registries that are more functional in getting the daily operations, weekly, monthly operations in line to validate the data, clean the data, and help manage that system. So that was one of the discussions. So if that just sparked a chord with you, you are welcome to come and join us in that work group. Okay. Then we looked at operations. I think Scott Christopher and TTCF gave us 3 pages of questions to go through. So there was a representative from the vendor present today that began to address that. Tammy's going to address every single question so we can move forward with that. We really didn't get into the mapping pieces of that. That's a critical issue because if it's not mapped right, then your data is all skewed. So that's an issue we'll take back up. We are going to plan on having a full-day workshop in the next 60 days. And so we will send that out. Anyone can participate in that process. So please, if you don't feel like because you're not on that group, you cannot participate. Everybody in this room has a voice as far as I'm concerned. We did not get into any of the rehab or disaster discussion this morning. We did meet for 2 hours, and most of our time was spent on the education resources and then talking to the vendor. Any questions? Any questions from any of the people that were there? Anybody have any additional comments? Kelly, Brenda, Mary? Anybody? Okay. Then we'll close this, move this to next. So one of the things that we talked about is how to use data. So The National Trauma Data Bank, you guys know, has a system now called TQIP, Trauma Quality Improvement Process. And so they're beginning to take the data and look at outcomes at the national level and put together resources to be able to say, these are things you should think about with this patient population. So if you'll flip it to the next slide, go ahead. They put together a geriatric, so the TQIP group has a workbook and resources, go back. The actual program is up there, but it's fairly lengthy. I wouldn't show it to everybody today. The purpose of bringing this up is that at the last committee, we did approve to start a best practice work group, and Brian Eastridge did agree to chair that. So this is one of the items that we're going to give to him and to that group and ask them to review that. Again, the work group is anyone who wants to participate can participate in that. This document has some excellent resources. I can tell you that we took this personally at Parkland and looked at it. And how many of you know what the beer's medication list is? It doesn't mean medications that you can drink with beer. It's a list of medications that have known bad outcomes for geriatric patients. And so we took that list and laminated it and put it in our trauma nurse clinician booklet. So every time we see a geriatric patient, 65 or older, we screen through that list. And so that goes into the PI process then that you ordered this Beers List medication for this patient. So we're actually beginning to change practice with some of the residents by that constant daily feedback to them. And so, again, the goal is to look at this patient population and what their specific needs are. So we're going to ask Brian to take this as the first project for that best practice group. So, again, I heard TTAF is Lisa Price say that y'all were going to do that as well. So it would be a great opportunity for people to work together in a multidisciplinary approach to do this. Any questions on that? If you'll just flip to the next slide, you can see what's in this. There's trauma team activation, initial evaluation, specific considerations about the geriatric patient, decision making, and then the appendix has a list of resources that are available to you to use. And for example, the Beers List is on there. We have a work group that includes a gerontologist, geriatrician that works with us, and so I asked her, what's the most important thing we should know about a geriatric patient and be concerned with? And her answer was delirium. And so there's a definition for that and how to screen for that. So anyway, it's a great resource. I just got clearance today to actually share this booklet. And so I know that it was out for a while and they wouldn't allow anybody to share it. I know Joelle and her team had asked for it. If you're not part of TQIP, they were like, no, you can't share it. Now they've released it and it can be shared. So we're going to send it to Brenda and send it to the TTCF so you can actually post that and anyone can have access to it. I think it's about 40-something pages. You can download it and then you can use it. What we did is we downloaded it and then printed it in a spiral-bound format and shrank it so that every resident could get one individually. So there's just some different ways you can actually use that. So any discussion on geriatrics? Any comments from the committee? I know that if you've been here in the last two committee meetings, there's been multiple PowerPoints that have talked about the geriatric issues. So this is one of the ways for us to use the data that we do have available to us and then begin to look at improvements for the system.
Jory, would you send it to the RACs also?
Yes. Who can I send it to that will send it to everybody? Okay. The next slide talks about the next group of issues. So if you're from a hospital in the North Central Texas Regional Trauma Advisory Council, I know Leanne, Jamie's in the room, would you just stand up for a second if you're from RAC-E? Because this data came from the RACs, those hospitals. So I'm just showing you some examples of data. So go next slide. So what we began, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Go ahead. I don't know if you can move that. Well, this is just a screening pilot. So we ask the hospitals to share their trauma registry data to look at alcohol. The question that we were trying to answer, it's actually on that thumb drive, Lonnie, if you want to We asked the hospitals if we could look at specific holidays to see if there was an increase in motor vehicle crashes admitted that were without known alcohol on board. So that means that the hospital had to be able to say that they tracked that alcohol, right? That means they had to do a blood alcohol. And so we asked specifically for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And that's probably a good place to, that's the last slide. This is just the screening data. So if you look at the blue, anyway, what the point it makes is that overall there's like a 20% incidence of alcohol-related trauma. We all know that, right? But during these holiday seasons, it peaks between 36 and 44%. Those 3 days, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So the question is, we can pull this out of the Trauma Service Area E. Is there an opportunity to pull it out from all of the RACs to make a point through the legislation? I know the sobriety test issues went through the legislation process, but is this data that we would be willing or wanted to look at the state level? So I wanted to ask the committee about this.
Yes. Good idea.
We're actually going back to the hospitals that we originally worked with and are asking to add the 4th of July to that. Any comments from the committee members? Beneficial?
How about all 3 summer holidays?
Do what?
How about all 3 summer holidays?
All 3? Memorial Day, Labor Day, and the 4th of July?
Yeah.
So, Tammy, I don't know how this is reflected in the state registry. I know that Jane, when we met a year ago when we were looking at our strategic goals, one of the goals was to be able to truly identify which patients came in with alcohol on board and look at adding data elements so that you could screen for that, because a lot of the hospitals will not draw blood alcohol on a patient for whatever reason. So, Dr. Stewart, you have any thoughts on that? Should we draw blood alcohol on every patient?
I think you should draw on every adult patient who's sick. Yeah, I do.
Some hospitals won't do it. I mean,
I know. Remember we had a whole work
That-
group
I know.
that went through it.
that's the reason I ask you. So from the committee, what would be your recommendations?
Draw the BA.
So the first recommendation is we want to do this study for the state through all RACs. So Wanda, Kelly, those of you who represent RACs, is this going to be doable?
I would say yes, but I'm not hospital. I'm not the one. Alex, is this doable? Go back through.
There's fields that we can probably pull it. We don't draw blood out, but we won't be able to look. I mean, we can go back and see, but there's indicators there that will tell you alcohol related or not. And it would just have to be the consistency, like Dr. Stewart was saying, that I mean, who tests? I mean, some hospital tests up to 15, some others 8. So you just have to take all those things into consideration once the data comes out.
Okay, so the recommendations are to add all of the holidays, is that correct?
Yes.
And then to try to get it from all of the trauma centers. I guess we could break it down by level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And the only reason I say that is because most of the level 1s draw it because of the expert screening. It's pretty much mandated for that. A lot of the level 2s do it, but not necessarily for every case. The level 3s, give me some perspective. Do all the level 3s do it, or sometimes?
No, inconsistent.
When it's clinically indicated, it's what most people do. Yes?
Going back to a previous presentation, what question are we trying to answer?
The reason I asked for this information from IRAC was to help us through the legislative process for sobriety test and to make the point. Also with the driver responsibility bill, there's a lot of people who say, you know, why should this person have to pay in? They didn't kill anybody in a DWI. I just want to show the evidence that alcohol is a factor in the trauma center, especially during the holidays.
Another area that might be helpful is the alcohol-related death is not part of the death certificate. smoking, whether or not it's smoking related is on the death certificate, but not whether or not it was alcohol related.
Yeah. Good point. Anybody else?
If the lower level trauma centers are reluctant to draw it on every.
Could I ask everyone to use the microphone? I can actually hear well, but the particularly the remote people can't hear. I didn't use it either.
I think, is it on? Can you hear me?
While they're getting that turned on, I would just recommend that you add Super Bowl Sunday to your list of days.
That means we got to include the car races too.
If the lower level trauma centers are reluctant to draw the blood alcohol on every patient, is it possible to have them qualify why? Many times it's for insurance payer reasons, and so if we ask why, the reason why it wasn't drawn, if we ask them to make that as a part of a standing order set, but if they're not getting reimbursed because of the alcohol being positive, they're going to drop it off there. So we might be able to track some reasons for why they're not drawing it that way, other than it just being a not really a choice, but just.
Okay. I guess the argument that I would have, I mean, I agree we need to find out, but I guess it's probably been 5 years ago. There was a huge cry, we're not being reimbursed for alcohol related. Don't do the blood alcohol. Maybe it's longer than that. But 10 years ago? But the issue is, when we did the investigation, we could find no actual evidence that ever occurred. Right?
Well, so I think what we found was it may occur, but it occurs exceedingly rarely. And it is true that there are some, like for example, when we got all the hospitals together, there may be certain instances where it's a very expensive patient, like a very expensive $1 million bill, and that sometimes it is true that there was some evidence that some of those payers would do that. It's an exceedingly rare thing, and most of the time it makes no difference. And it certainly, I think the level ones would, I'll just say our experience is we do it routinely, hardly ever gets denied on the basis of that reason. There's many other reasons why they deny payment besides a positive alcohol screen. So it's the right thing to do from a patient care standpoint. So I think that should be our message. It's the right thing to do because you need to identify the problem, do screening and brief intervention. That should be the goal, and it's the right thing to do. That's what we should say. And it is true that in extremely rare events, mainly, and there's a lot of some degree of superstition about some of these things, about people basically, propagating, stories that once you try to track them down, you can't really do it. It's just very rare that he gets denied on the basis of that. And we had very little traction, though, in going to the insurance board of trying to get them to make changes. So I just don't think that's likely to happen.
Okay. So why don't we do this? If Kathy, Carla, and Christy could reach out to the level 3s and the level 4s to see if there are defined reasons that we can mitigate, that would be great. And Lori, if you would talk to the other level 2 facilities to find out what's the consistency in doing the blood alcohol. I know most of the level 1s are doing it. Is there a level 1 in the room that doesn't do blood alcohol on every patient? Most of them are doing it. Okay. Any other discussion about the blood alcohol? So the recommendations are to try to get it from all the trauma centers, include all of the known holidays, and then to work with some of those specific groups. Lori, anything from pediatric hospitals? Don't include them?
No, don't include them. Our patients don't drive.
Wish we could draw their parents, though.
Yeah. Now, if we could figure out how many of those crashes there were children in the car, that would be helpful. That would be good information to have. But they're not driving, so.
Okay. Any discussion from the audience about this?
What's the time frame that you're thinking of?
Well, we try to get 2 years worth of data, so we'll go back 2 years. Next slide. Just keep going. I don't know why that didn't show up. Go ahead, go ahead. So now we're going to talk about a little more controversial issue. We kind of had a short agenda just so we could spend all the time we needed to talk about this. So Jane, who's going to lead us through this? Okay, you got it. No, well, I'll facilitate the discussion, but you got to. So at the last committee, we talked about the potential changes. After the February meeting, the GTAC executive group, is that what we call ourselves now, Ronnie? The GTAC members and the committee chairs met to look at this, and they came up with some proposals. So the goal is, by the end of the meeting today, this committee will have selected the best option that works for us, and then a secondary option. So, Jane?
Well, they have asked you, the council has asked that the committee rank order file all of the options. So
Okay.
there are 5 options today that you're going to look at, and these came out of the February meeting, the meeting with the committee chairs and the council. So all of the schedules that you're going to look at today begin with a 1-hour GTAC meeting. The thought process there is that the council meets, the departments do all of their committee reports. The things that need to be heard by all of the committees are communicated there. And then we start with the committee meetings. All the schedules allow for 10 committee meetings. They begin day 2 at 8 o'clock and end with a 2-hour GTAC meeting. So that would be on day 2. These are all for 2-day schedules. Okay. So option A for day 1, the 1-hour GTAC meeting would begin at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, followed by 4 committee meetings that last for an hour, concluding at 1800, which would be 6 p.m. Day 2 begins at 8 a.m. with 6 consecutive committee meetings, all running for 1 hour. There is no lunch break on day 2. The 2-hour GTAC meeting begins at 2 p.m. and concludes at 4. That's option A. Option B, day 1, again, you're beginning the GTAC meeting at 1 p.m.
Dr. Stewart. Ronnie.
Phone.
You would have missed it.
Day 1 begins again at 1 p.m. with the with the council meeting. Then is followed by 4 consecutive committee meetings, and these meetings run for 50 minutes. Allows basically 10 minutes for turnover between. Day 2 begins at 8 a.m. and you have, again, 6 committee meetings running after that. These are all 50-minute meetings. You have 10 minutes for lunch, either between Committee H and I or between I and J. And then GTAC picks up at 2 o'clock and finishes at 4. Okay. Third option, option C, day 1 begins at 10 a.m. runs through 11 o'clock. Then we start at 11 o'clock, and we have 1 committee meeting between 11 and 12 for 1 hour, break for lunch. Then you have a committee meeting for a slot for an hour and a half, and an hour and a half afterward. I'm sorry, the first committee meeting is an hour and a half also. So it's an hour and a half committee meetings thereafter, and we finish at 6 o'clock. Day 2 start at 8, run for an hour and a half for all the committee meetings. The 6, you do have a break for lunch on this day. GTAC final meeting begins at 6 and ends at 8 p.m. Day 1 starts at 9 a.m., runs till 10 with the GTAC hour meeting. Then you pick up on committee meetings that run for, let's see, an hour in the morning, 2 committee meetings, and then after the afternoon sessions, you've got, well, there's an hour and a half, and an hour and a half, and then an hour and a half for the 3 afternoon sessions. Day 2 begins at 8 with an hour and a half meeting, followed by another hour and a half meeting, followed by another hour and a half meeting. Break for lunch, and then you conclude with hour and a half meetings in the afternoon. GTAC final 2-hour meeting is at 4:30 and concludes at 6:30. And option E is the last option. Day 1 begins early, 8:30 to 9:30 is the GTAC meeting, followed by consecutive committee meetings, 9:30 to 11, an hour meeting for B for the second meeting. You do have a break in here for lunch for an hour, then an hour meeting, and combined followed with an hour and a half meeting, then another hour and a half meeting. So this one has a combination of 1 hour and hour and a half meetings. On day 2, you start again at 8 a.m. with consecutive meetings. You do have an hour's break for lunch. GTAC convenes at 3 p.m. and concludes at 5. Those are the 5 options. And this is basically a summary of those 5 options, A through E.
So to just start the discussion, I think some of the critical issues we need to talk about is we have a lot of stakeholders who do not live in Austin that have to get here. Some come by air, some come by car. So the first question is starting time. What's the most reasonable starting time? And then some of the options, as you saw, only allow you to have a 1-hour meeting. I was one of the ones that said, no, the trauma committee needs at least an hour and a half. We asked for 2 hours, and that was not an option. So, I mean, there's a lot of, we typically bring data here. I purposely didn't bring any big PowerPoint presentations with data today because of all the other discussion that we're going to have. So those are the 2 big issues that you really need to keep in mind when you think about these options. So again, if you want to just look at the start time, the day it begins. So A starts at 1 and ends at 6. And it starts on day 2 at 4. It ends on day 2 at 4. And they're all, most of them are 1-hour meetings. I think they're actually all 1-hour meetings. So B starts at 1 on the first day and ends at 5, I guess 6. And then on day 2 ends at 4. And then they're all at 1-hour meetings. So the first question I would ask is, if you look at the start time, which would be the most optimal start time for you? I mean, Wanda, you probably travel the furthest.
Really, it's not going to change our travel at all. No matter what it is, we're going to come in before, and we'll have to leave probably the day after. So it
Okay, so then the next.
change a thing for us.
So what about the Lubbock group?
Won't change a thing.
How about the Amarillo group?
Won't change a thing.
Okay, because y'all are here for that other meeting before? Okay. So from the committee's group's decision then, which one of these options would you select as our first choice?
E.
E?
I like F.
Leave it the same? I don't think that was a choice.
No.
So which one would be your second choice?
D.
D.
Third?
C.
Consensus is C?
Yes.
4?
A or B are the same, so it doesn't matter.
4.5.
They're almost the same, so.
I guess one gets out 10 minutes early.
Yeah, that's about it.
I'm like, that didn't make sense.
That's not the only difference.
Yeah. So we'll just put A, B. Is that okay?
Yep.
Now, y'all are sure you can live with this? So I guess the Trauma Systems Committee answer to your question about ranking them for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be E, D, C, A, B. E, D, C, A, B. You want it right? Oh. Can I put it in a paper? Like an airplane. Does it have to be formal, or can I just? Okay, I can do that. Okay. Back to the PowerPoint. So we wanted to give time for Lori. I know some of you have already seen this clip that she has, but Lori's going to do an overview of what happened in West.
This video, I've actually borrowed it from my leadership. It's a lot of pictures from news and media and some local pics. I believe it will show you the regional response that it took, and I'll make some comments afterwards. It is very, it was made for my hospital leadership, so there are some parts of it that say Hillcrest Baptist Medical Center kind of over and over, but it really truly was a response from the trauma system, the regional RAC system that includes all of the players. But we'll watch the video and then.
Hillcrest Baptist Medical Center.
At Hillcrest Hospital in Waco, signs of progress.
All the patients are in rooms. We're kind of going over them from head to toe closely, looking for missed injuries.
We have had over the past less than 24 hours a total of 285 physicians and nurses and staff that have responded in addition to our normal staff that was here last evening when this event began to unfold. Over the last 19 hours, I would say their efforts have truly been heroic.
involved in the scene. But you certainly realizing there are individuals that are being hurt, that are harmed, and of course we want to be a place of protection and care for them.
So there were over 250 patients that were treated that evening of April 17th. If you received patients or were there assisting in that process, I wanted you to stand up and let us know. Yeah. Yeah. So how many other people also knew somebody in West? So truly from the region, I mean, West is a few minutes south of Hillsboro, and then there's Dallas-Fort Worth is the next major area, and then a little bit further south from West is us, and then the Temple area. And, 250 patients received great care from the moment things happened until, we were able to discharge the last patient. And there were definitely very heroic measures taken on scene. There's always going to be lessons learned, and we haven't even gotten through all of our after-action reviews. We've started some, but a lot of the regional processes and local processes haven't been finished or completed. But we really felt like it was a true team effort. All of the planning, all of the relationships that we have. We talk about we video this and it enables us, if we can't travel, we can watch it. But truly, for me, I know, we had cell phone numbers and we had, I'm standing on the back porch, receiving patients at the hospital. And, Ronnie Stewart called me, Kelly Stowell called me, different partners, whether it was my local partners or regional partners or statewide partners, we all knew each other. And it's because we meet all the time. And administrators sometimes ask us to put a dollar figure on, why do we need to spend that money? Why do you need to go to this meeting? And the communication and the relationships that we built. And this night, I don't think my administrators will ever ask me again. I really don't.
Any questions for Lori from the committee? Any questions from the audience? I think I would like to ask Dinah to stand up in the back of the room. I know Dinah has spent a lot of time in the last month and a half at the Capitol talking about what are the trauma dollars that are in the driver responsibility bill do for Texas. And I think, over and over again, people talk about the Texas trauma system and how we've built things onto that trauma system, the disaster response, the stroke response, the cardiac response. And I think what you saw in West is probably one of the best demonstrations of how we do work as a team, how the system comes together, and how the planning and the preparation are probably the most important things when you think about a response, as well as the providers that are actually there. So, Dinah, is there anything you want to comment and tie this back to the system and how we can work together? I think the people who responded to West deserve a round of applause and recognition. I don't even know how to begin to do that. Those people are our heroes. They're people that will not walk amongst us again. Some of them we knew personally. So it's a very sad day and a very tragic day for the state of Texas in regards to that. So Don, anything about how we need to voice our message that really talk about the system, because it cannot be an isolated, it has to be us as a system, West as a system, Hillcrest as a system moving forward.
Amazing points, and I really don't know how to add to, because that is just a great example to the Texas legislature why additional funding for the trauma system is needed. The challenge is they'll say, oh, well, y'all did it with what you have, so why do we need to give you more? But the crises that we've seen over the course of the last month, to me, they highlight the necessity of the trauma system and what you all do, the hospitals, the EMS providers, the RACs, all coming together to work for patient care. And nobody knows when these things are going to happen, and I know y'all all know that. The legislature is at a point of absolute crunch time on the budget. We have had an ask that's been circulating out there for most of the session, and then we refined it over the last month plus, that we are asking for additional funds for the trauma system and then additional funds for EMS and RACs to come out of the Account 5111 funds. Right now they have $59 million per year going to the Texas trauma system under the Account 5111 funding scenarios. We're asking that they increase that funding to $75 million per year. That would be in keeping with what the funding was 2 years ago when we saw the significant budget cuts last year. So we're going back there. We've always highlighted that that's, even if we got to $75 million, that's still not enough. But when you're bartering, you have to go sort of incrementally. In addition to that $75 million, we've asked that they appropriate $16 million to EMS, so that would be $8 million each year of the budget cycle. And then we've asked for $8 million to the RACs, and that would be $4 million per year. At the TTAF meeting the other night, we discussed this. We've had an action alert that went out a week or two ago, asking people to contact members of the conference committee. When I say we're at crunch time, we are at that point where I need key people that will contact these legislators, and doing it next week, it probably just is not going to matter. And I have further refined that action alert. I've sent it around to some key people. If you have an interest in it, I've got some copies listing out the conference committee members. Real quickly, if you live in or near these communities, please, please, please think of somebody that could contact these legislators in the next 5 hours. If you live in or near Waxahachie, Lake Dallas, Dayton, Houston, Simonton, the Woodlands, Lubbock, McAllen, Flower Mound, Houston, we especially need you to help us on these funding issues. So again, if you live in or near those areas, I've got some flyers. I'm glad to hand these out. I'm also glad to forward the PDF and Word document to get the word out. We're still hopeful. I won't give up until somebody says that I need to. There's still optimism out there, but again, we are down to those last moments. And I should mention that today things have sort of blown up over public education funding, and it's possible the big talk today is that there's going to be a special session on the budget. So we may be doing this whole thing again in June if they don't come to agreements on the total budget. So thank you. Thank y'all, and thank you for all that you do. I'm so proud to represent the communities that are in this room, and what y'all do. It makes my job easy in a lot of ways to go and brag on what y'all do at the legislature, so I appreciate that greatly. Thank y'all.
I have a question for Lori and for those of you in the audience. Are there any West firemen, firefighters, volunteers in the room? I guess my question to the committee and to those of you in the audience is, do you think there's anything we can do to help West that's not already being done, or that we can add to or complement or work with them?
I would say just reach out to them and see what it is that they need at this point. You know, that we're here, that we think about them, that we understand them.
Christine was part of the DDC response on scene, so I would ask her to make comment on that. I'm not sure if there is anything that...
Christine, not to put you in the limelight, but...
So
at this point, there's not really any things that they need. The community surrounding West, our region, the state of Texas, the nation came full brunt forward. And it's sad to say it is they came so full brunt forward that that small city of West is having a hard time going through all the donations that they have received. I've worked since the night of the incident with the EMS and with DSHS, and I'm proud to say they were insured probably better than any service I've seen insured, and everything is getting taken care of. And what they haven't been able to get initially, the RAC was able to give them the difference in between to cover what they need. Then the fire associations have been very forthcoming in helping West Fire Department get all of their items. So at this point, there's not a lot of things they need. Still need prayers. We're still doing psychosocial. Now ask me again in a month, and that's going to probably change because we're in the clearing and the rebuilding stages. And so some things do come up that people don't think of. Everybody wants to help right then when it happens. And it's 30 days or 60 days later when something comes up, everybody's like, oh, we didn't even think about that. So if you're interested, if you forward me the information that, hey, 6 months, 2 months, whatever, we're interested in helping, let me know. But there's been such an outpouring. I'll thank everybody on their behalf because they say thank you every time. So there's been such an outpouring that trying to find a place to put everything has been really difficult. And after that, lots of money came in, so that's been able to fill a whole bunch of gaps as well. So I'm proud to say we've been able to take good care of them, but don't want to say no because I don't know where we're going to stand in 30 or 60 days down the road.
Could we ask you to come back to the committee in August and just give us an update if there's anything you think that we could do as a committee or as stakeholders to support West?
Absolutely.
Or any of the members of West?
Absolutely.
Anybody from the committee have any comments? Thank you so much, Christine, for what you do. Any other comments?
I'll just make one last comment. I've done this a couple of times in different meetings, but just publicly thank all of my colleagues. It was probably 36 hours after the event when I actually got to look at social media or my emails or different things just to take a breath. And it was my friends, family, and my colleagues that really, when I got a chance to think about it for a second, I found well wishes and we're thinking about you and hang in there, and that really helped through a very trying time. You put your pants on and you go to work and you get things done, but I couldn't have done it without, and we couldn't have done it without the support of our system, and I wanted to thank everybody for that.
With that, is anybody involved in the event last night with the tornadoes from Granbury or that area that's here? Can you come up to the mic so we can recognize you?
Hello, my name is Vern Walker, and I'm the Executive Director of Texas EMS. We are the primary response service for Granbury.
I know that there's still a lot of stuff going on there and people trying to get the facts versus rumors and this and that, but I happened to go through that area late last night, and so I just want to say thank you for all that you do and recognize you for what you did. It's my understanding that there were 6 fatalities in that event.
Yes, ma'am, there were 6 fatalities. We relocated about 250 people. We triaged 125 there at the scene, and 38 we took into the local hospital, and then with the help of our RAC, another reason for the trauma systems. I mean, without their help and without the people around us coming in to help us do it, we'd have never got it done. But we accomplished all of that in about 4 hours.
Amazing.
It worked very smooth, very quick, and the system works. I mean, you just have to get in there and get it done. So I think my crews, at home, they're the ones that made it all happen, and they've done a phenomenal job, and I'm very proud of them.
We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything they want to say? If we could go back, I think we just have one slide left. We really wanted to open it up for the stakeholders and for comments, and so Dr. Stewart left this comment before he left. If you guys were here at the February meeting, you remember the letter that we were going to write to the American College of Surgeons regarding the education and the issues for the trauma registrars. That letter was written. It did go. It has actually been reviewed by the American College of Surgeons. I don't know what the outcome is, but he wanted me to know that they did get that letter. And the optimal resource document is currently under its final revision by the American College of Surgeons. So that was his comment. So Lori, anything from pediatrics that you want to make us aware of?
There was a few updates from EMSC at the Pediatric Committee. One of the things that they discussed in February was recommendations for radiology studies for children. They took that to the Medical Directors Committee and got support, so they will move forward with that and that recommendation. Otherwise, they talked a little bit about the survey that went out, which was the needs assessment. And so here in Texas, we actually got a 60% response rate, which was over 300 hospitals. So really, in the big scheme of things, it's actually the largest response of any state. So that's very impressive for Texas. I think those are probably the two biggies. Mary, anything else you can think of that was?
Yeah, there was one piece of data. My mic doesn't work. Can you hear me? There was one piece of data that was really kind of interesting, and something that I didn't, I guess, appreciate was that that Texas has the largest number of children living in a rural population than any other state does, mostly because most of our state is rural. So this pediatric assessment for us is truly a very important thing and a very important tool. It's going to provide us a lot of really good information, and we're going to have a lot to bring to the table nationally about children living in rural areas and the type of care that we're able to provide for them there. So. Oh, the other thing is the Child Fatality Review Team report is now out, and it's out on the DSHS website. And unlike Tammy, I can't spout the entire web address. So it is out there if you put in annual report for Child Fatality Review Team. It's a very extensive statewide report. So.
Dr. Smith, is there anything you want to make the committee aware of? Kathy Rogers, anything? David? Lori, anything from you? Mary, anything else? Carla? Christy? No. Miss Lisa?
The TTAF Trauma Division has been working for quite some time on a guideline document for trauma centers to help them evaluate their activation criteria and to develop activation criteria. And we're hoping that that will come out very soon. It's in its final edit process and should be able to be distributed very soon.
Alex? Anything from the stakeholders? I'm trying to use up this last 25 minutes here because I don't want to take that time away from us. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. Is this on? Yeah. My name is Scott Mitchell. I'm Fire Chief at Ferris Fire Department. I want to segue a little bit off what Dinah just said about the last 6 hours of the session. If those that are not in the Dallas-Fort Worth media market have not seen it, and those that didn't pay attention when they did, several days ago, KXAS Channel 5 ran a very good article on dedicated funds as far as associations with the Rural Assistance Fund for volunteer fire departments. Obviously, they were building off of West and the fact that many fire departments across the state have been applying grant after grant after grant, trying to receive money from the Forest Service through a fund dedicated for firefighters that comes off of fees from insurance policies and believe it or not, sales tax off of fireworks. So, hey, these funds total are close to about $60 million, and they allocated $8 million last time. So, sound familiar? This is an issue affecting not only trauma funding, uncompensated care EMS funding, it also affects the fire service, and God only knows what else they've got in there. It is an excellent video because it breaks it down in layman's terms very quickly that most people go, really? That's wrong. And it also talks about some initiatives that are being pushed forth by a couple of legislators to change it and say dedicated funds are for what they're dedicated to pay, not to be used as a shell game to support the general fund. My recommendation to all our stakeholders across the state is go online to the KXAS Channel 5 website. It's the NBC affiliate in Dallas-Fort Worth. Download that little segment and send it to your representative. I can tell you Representative Pitts got it from me and Senator Nelson got it from me. And sometimes, and then you can add some narrative because I included not only the fire aspect, which I desperately need also, but I also included the uncompensated care, the trauma funding, and the EMS funding. And sometimes, even though with most electronic media they're really doing a count and a checkbox, one of those assistants might actually watch the video, and a picture carries a lot more power than just a piece of paper with something written on it. So, just a suggestion, as a TTAF or a GTAC committee, you guys, you can't lobby, but as individual stakeholders out there in the audience and in the electronic audience, we can and we should. Thanks.
Mr. Christopher?
Just a couple of things. Scott Christopher from Nacogdoches. First, at the Texas Trauma Coordinators meeting on this past Tuesday, that organization selected their annual Lifetime Achievement Award and awarded that to Ms. Cheryl Dykes, who was a trauma program manager at the Woodlands for many years. So, applause to Ms. Dykes.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Secondly, and y'all may not want to go down this road because this committee and the disaster committee are pretty adamant about that 90 minutes. But what I did, listening to the committee comments and stuff over the last day and a half, is created another option as far as the scheduling goes. But it's based more on a 75-minute meeting structure as opposed to a 90 or 60. So it's available if y'all want to look at it. I got it on my laptop, and I'll be happy to share it with you. But and I'd strongly ask that all the subcommittees solicit stakeholder input on this selection of this scheduling change, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of that the last day and a half. So thank you.
Thank you. So let's back up here. Did you guys feel like you had a voice to rank these? Not you, the people behind you.
Oh, sorry.
I know you're going to talk. You guys have any, do you feel like you had ample voice in what we talked about in selecting the group? No?
Not just in this committee, it's been that way in all the committees. The committee goes through and does their thing, and then they're like, okay, Jane, we think A and E and B and C.
Well, we can certainly pull ours back, so I want to make sure.
Gotta appreciate what he did, and I saw lots of no's shaking their head. I'll be the one to come up and talk. So this one was supposed to be a lot of stakeholder input. Most of the committees have not asked about stakeholder input like we do after every agenda item or at the end. It'd be like, okay, before we take a vote, does anybody have what they want to input? I do have to say that EMS and education and one other committee, and I can't remember, so somebody may remember, they actually chose to keep to push forward the current structure and then one of the other avenues. I've only heard bits or pieces of Scott's, but from what I've heard, it sounds like it's kind of making GTAC Council happy, still kind of keeping us. But whatever it's scheduled, I'm the RAC ED, so I'm coming whenever it's going to happen, and I'll still be here all week, whether or not GTAC meets all week or not. But I'm not sure that others that aren't RAC personnel either have been scared or don't think they're. I feel that they don't think it matters because it hasn't mattered historically, and that maybe they might have that same feeling since they weren't put to the point to say, okay, what do y'all in the audience think? Just my 2 cents.
Okay, Jane, put that back up there.
Hey, can I show you mine right quick?
Sure.
Just because the icon's right there. Can you minimize that now? And go to the desktop thing, the blue screen, and open that guy right there. Oh, sorry. Mine's a 2-day deal. Like I said, it's based on 75-minute meetings, okay? Predominantly taking into account, because in the EMS committee yesterday morning, there was a lot of concern about getting here in time and being able to make a plane when you leave on the end of day 2. So that's kind of what fueled my creation here. But anyway, day 1 started at 11:30. From 11:30 to 12:30, had that 1-hour GTAC blast off. And then from 12:30 to 8 o'clock at night,
Yes.
on day 1.
I have to call you back. Yes. Okay.
Do what? Oh. 12:30 to 8 o'clock at night, have 6 75-minute long subcommittee meetings. No lunch or no supper in there either. And then on day 2, start at 8, finish up the last 4 subcommittee meetings. That ends at 1 o'clock. So you can do it one of 2 ways at this point. You can either stop and go to lunch and come back and do a 2 to 4 closeout GTAC, or you can just keep on keeping on and do a 1 to 3 and go to the house at 3. And what this does is there's time the morning of day 1 for work groups to meet, other organizations to meet, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you really want to get technical about it, I guess those organizations could meet after the main meeting. So anyway, that's just something I would like to throw out there, get on the table, and be added for consideration maybe, if we got to make a change. And I'm calling that option G, because I'm thinking option F is don't change nothing. Just keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Scott. So let's go back to the audience. I want to make sure you cannot leave this committee without feeling like you have a voice. If I have to go one by one by one.
We got 16 minutes.
So of all the options that you've seen, the group originally decided on E, so your choice. I'm volunteer, voluntold, yes or no. Wanda. I'm going to call y'all up one by one.
I guess I sort of go back to, and we're changing because I guess I've never really been clear about why we're changing. I'm old enough to have been coming to GTAC meetings where we were having dinner at IHOP at midnight because the meetings were that long. And frankly, I'm older, and that's not near as cool as it was early on. So I personally like being able to go to dinner and have more than, gee, it was nice seeing you, call me sometime while I run down the hallway to yet another meeting. I think what it does is it forces there to be more committee meetings outside of this meeting, which means that there will be fewer stakeholders because they can't travel that much. And it will get to the point where these meetings will simply be reporting what the interim meetings have done with less stakeholder input.
So Jane, can you just take us back down memory lane about why there was a push to change?
There's been I think there are multiple reasons, multiple things that play into it, Jory. Some of it has been that there have been stakeholders that have voiced concerns that council members do not attend committee meetings. We have, I think, we have a fair number of new council members that were appointed in 12. These council members have a difficult time coming here for 3 days. So they were very interested in getting the meetings down to 2 days. So, number one, GTAC meets first, and then they are here and they can attend the committee meetings. And then GTAC meets at the end of the committee meetings, and the council can take action at that point in time. That is kind of what was driving it. You've got folks coming in from, and I know the stakeholders here come in from all over the state, but there are a lot of stakeholders here that are here and they get paid to come here. That's part of their job to come. The council members, not necessarily so. They come from other areas of the state and they are not necessarily, when they're gone from their businesses, they're gone from their jobs. And so those are some of the considerations and some of the discussions that came from the council members.
Okay. So who else can I call on for their opinion? Kelly.
Well, I fall into that contingency, and this is part of my job, and I get paid to come do this, so I'm not sure that I have enough of an opinion that this is going to factor much into this if I need to be here. But even with this, I still try to limit my attendance, quite honestly, to disaster, trauma systems, the registry group, some of my focus areas, because we have fairly good representation throughout the other GTAC committees by other participants in the RAC. And I live 45 minutes from here, so I'm probably not the best person to ask for that.
Leanne.
That's what we get for knowing Jory.
So I'm one of those people that's going to be here anyway. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here the whole time. It's really frustrating when no breaks are put in, there's no lunch, because I'm in every meeting, every day, all day long. And some of you are and some of you aren't, but a lot of us, that's our job. And so, it's, we're going to be here early. Many of us are here earlier for other meetings. Many of us are going to stay later. It's to me, the frustrating part is this just keeps getting dragged out. It's such a waste of time. There's so many other things that we could be doing. And so I'm frustrated with that. But so that would be my say.
Karen Pritchard.
Hi. All this way to say that I'm on the GTAC Council, but I was appointed in November and really was not involved at all in that discussion. Apparently that all took place at a retreat. And my first meeting, everybody was mad at everybody, and there was lots of gunshots going back and forth. And so I thought, what have I done? But I don't, as far as me personally, I feel like that we need to have as many people come to all of the meetings as we can. As far as I'm concerned, I would go to every committee meeting. That's not an issue with me because I'm semi-retired now. But if it's your job, that's great, and you come to all the meetings, then you should. But then if you don't have a responsibility to be here for all the meetings and you only can get here for some of them, that's good too. I would just like to see as many people gather for this effort as can possibly be here. I personally like Scott's. I like his option. But I think another option is not do anything. Just leave it the way it is. I'm not sure we know how many people are going to be negatively impacted by just leaving it alone.
Okay.
So-
Wendy. Then Terry. Then Scott. Then Jim. And then Carolyn.
I guess I'm one of those people that when I'm going to be here, when I need to be here, and so I just look at it every time and figure out what I can make and what I need to go to. I'm like Kelly, I tend to focus on the meetings that pertain specifically to my interest. I don't generally come to some of the EMS provider meetings and some of those just because I need time to do other things. For those that have to attend every meeting, I think we should really listen to their voice.
I'll echo what Kelly said. I come up here to really do a lot of networking. That's one of the best things I think about GTAC is meeting with colleagues and sharing information and talking about the things we've talked about. So I'm very flexible. I get paid to be here. I try to attend as many meetings as possible. Sometimes when I'm ready to get away from the office, I attend more meetings than others. So it's a nice break to come up here and just, again, work with colleagues. And so any of those options are viable for me. I just live down the road, so I can travel back and forth. So I can go either way.
I got an option H. However, I may
cannot work on the computer in the back of the room anymore.
However, I may take a bullet for this one. I think something that the council, the GTAC council, should consider is, and I'm sure it's been talked about, but I don't know that it's been talked about publicly, is looking at the 10 committees. And maybe there's opportunity to make the committee meeting time slot longer while at the same time combining some committees.
That was discussed, and that was a bullet.
So, just a thought.
Terry? Carolyn?
I'm kind of like some of the other ones, Jory. I have to be here anyway as the RAC chair, and I feel like it's my responsibility to take the information back to my RAC. For most of the committees, I sit through the meetings anyway, and I've got probably a shorter travel time than some of the people around the state. I mean, it's 2 hours. So for me, I'm going to be here anyway. So the earlier, the better for me, because I can come in the morning of and leave, whatever time and probably get home safely. So I'm kind of unbiased. I'd rather get here, get it done, and go home.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so let me see if I can make this less painful for everybody. How many want it? Raise your hand. How many just want to leave it like it is?
Yeah, there you go.
Raise your hands high. I'm not voting because I feel like I need to stay out of it. So that looks like number 1 is leave it like it is. So if we go back to our little list, E was next. How many of you want to go to option E? I can count that far. How many want to go to option D? Option C? Nobody. Option A? Option B? How about option F? That was leave it like it is. How about G? Scott's?
That was Scott's plan.
Scott's plan. Option G. Well, that is yours. H. The one with the bullet. To combine some of the meetings. Okay, so is there anybody in the room who does not feel like you had a voice in this discussion? Please step to the microphone.
Can we vote on when the meetings, which committee meetings are meeting when? I think that has a big impact on people too.
I don't think we can do that yet. The first is to set the stage, because once they decide, there was a discussion of, do you want to meet on Tuesday or Wednesday? Are you talking about that discussion? So all the GTAC meetings will meet on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday and Friday. So How many of you would vote that all the GTAC meetings would?
What happens to TTCF?
TTCF meets Tuesdays.
Yeah, but TTCF is really not part of the GTAC, so we're just talking about the GTAC committee structure. So the GTAC committee structure, the recommendation is that they would meet on Tuesday and Wednesday, Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday and Friday. So A, B, or C. So the first option is that all the GTAC committees will meet on on Tuesday and Wednesday. How many want to do that? If you leave it like it is, we're already meeting Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so you just voted to leave it like it is, right?
But if we're forced to make what the 2 days are, it might be good to get feedback.
So say that out loud.
So we all want to leave it like it is. That's the number one vote. But if we're forced to change it with what we've been given, I think we should go ahead and move forward with what's the majority census right now for Tuesday, Wednesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday, just to have that backup in case we're forced to change to a 2-day schedule.
And then this is just GTAC.
Wednesday, Thursday.
So Tuesday, Wednesday, raise your hand. Everybody has to participate in one of the selections. Or Wednesday, Thursday, raise your hands. Oh, looks like Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday, Friday. Nobody likes driving home on Fridays? I can't believe that. Okay. So Wednesday, Thursday is the most optimal for everybody, right? Everybody agree? Thanks for bringing that up, Christy. Any other issues with this?
Scott?
Miss Welch, you have 1 minute.
Okay, just real quickly, I think most of y'all know that the driver responsibility program bill that would have abolished that died last Thursday. There's always the possibility that it could be amended on somewhere, but that's good news. The other piece that I want to make sure that the Trauma Systems Committee is aware of is there's a bill out there, Senate Bill 830. It looks like it's dying a slow death, but Senate bills can live a little bit longer than House bills. This bill would look at telemedicine in level 4 trauma facilities in populations of 50,000 or less. They could have telemedicine instead of having a physician at a level 4 trauma facility. The bill did create some buzz. It started creating some heartburn, but then it got derailed and has sort of out there dying. But the ask of the GTAC Trauma Systems Committee, Senator Schwartner, who is carrying the bill, we indicated to him that we would have asked the GTAC Trauma Systems Committee to look at telemedicine options again. We know that this committee looked at telemedicine probably 6 years ago, and so just asking that this committee would review telemedicine in rural trauma facilities in the future. So that's
Wait, what'd you do with our minutes?
It's about to be gone.
I know. We don't have 38 seconds here.
Yeah, you do that.
How many
So
of you
does the
want to
buzzer
replace?
go off?
Wait. How many of
the
you want to
shot clock?
replace the physician with telemedicine? Raise your hands. How many vote against that? Raise your hands. Quickest way to say no to something. Okay. I do have something I want to do. It's going to take longer than 20 seconds. And so, since the last time that we met, actually we met before this, we lost firefighters in Bryan, Texas. We have now lost individuals in West, and we don't really know the full impact of Granbury. So I want you guys to stand up and hold hands. And we're going to have a moment of silence in remembrance of these individuals, even if you can shut that thing off. You got to hold hands with somebody. Okay, Christine. Christine's going to be our lead in just a moment of silence. So we're not going to talk. We're just going to be quiet. Okay. I just want to say thank you to every one of you. I mean, I don't think people really realize what you do on a daily basis or what you give up. And when you come down here, sometimes the risk that you take being in Austin. But I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you. It is a risk. Well, driving home.